Hey, welcome to God's Glory and Men's Real Stories. I'm excited that you would join us today for another great episode. And to all those listening for the first time, hey, thank you for joining us. I want you to know that your story, what you may be going through, and just you as a whole, they matter here. And you're not alone. So don't worry about what chapter you're in because God's still writing your story. So, hey, look, sit back with a community that cares about you and hopes that you feel God's love as well as see God's glory in men's real stories. So, my special guest today is a brother who, after seeing what he was doing in the therapy and I'm going to rewind that back. After seeing what he was doing in the therapy and theology space, I knew we were meant to meet. So today is a treat. I'm excited for him to share a product he created that takes both areas and puts them together for all my brothers and sisters who are always trying to grow mentally and spiritually, and hear his story of how how all of this came about. So I want you to welcome our brother, John Coaxum, to the episode. What's going on, bro?
What's up, Rob? So nice to finally meet you, man, and so glad you decided to have me on, man. Awesome.
Yeah, no. Hey, man, this is a treat, as I just said. And, I don't often get to talk to another brother who is in the space of seeing the importance of God and therapy, as my shirt says. And
There you
so
go.
tonight is truly a treat. It's an honor to really get to know a little bit more about your story, how you got into this space. But before we even start that, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody who has not met you or has yet to meet you?
Yeah, so I'm John Coaxum, born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina. So I'm a Southern boy, although you won't really hear the Southern twang. I've probably been away too long or what have you. I don't know. But was raised there, man. Went off to school in Huntsville, Alabama. Went to a school called Oakwood University. Got my pastoral and evangelism degree, or a Master of Arts in Theology. Then I went on to Andrews University in Michigan, as a matter of fact, got a Master's of Divinity. And then I started pastoring. And then a couple of years later, I went back to school and got my Master of Arts in Clinical Mental Health Counseling. And today, I'm a licensed professional counselor, which I'm really just happy and blessed that God allowed me to be able to do that while I was pastoring. And there's a story with that, of course. But I'm also married to the love
Of
of my
course.
life. Yeah, my best friend, Leah, and I have a 4-year-old daughter as well. And currently we reside in Columbus, Ohio. And I think that basically covers the basics, I think.
No, yeah, that you covered it all. I mean, I
Yep.
love how, like, so you know what it's like to have a 4-year-old daughter. I have a 4-year-old daughter as well, turning 5
Woo.
in May. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That shake just tells it all. Like, we
Yeah, I'm with you.
understand each other already.
Yeah, man.
But no, it's a blessing. It truly is, and I love what they bring to our lives, as we always think about what we're giving them, but what they're giving us and what they're teaching us is just it's so rich, the stories that come out of that. So I'm sure we could spend a whole hour and a half just talking about the stories that have come out of that. But I it's funny, as you were sitting there introducing yourself, I was thinking, wow. So he was a pastor first. You were a pastor first,
Mhm. Yep.
then you went
Yep.
and became a counselor.
Yes. And I'm doing both even now, but
Right.
yes. Yes,
Right.
yes, yes. Yeah.
So, man, I couldn't help that. Immediately that screamed out to me, like,
Yeah.
something happened there that made him decide that, you know what, it
Uh-huh.
just being a pastor alone did not certify me or prepare me for what I'm walking into as a pastor. Is that fair to say?
To some degree, yeah. Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm gonna just start even there, man. What
Let's
what
go.
what happened? Yeah, what happened that made you, not even what happened, but what was it that made you say, you know what, I think it would help to go back to school again?
Yeah. So honestly, man, even when I was in school studying for pastoral ministry, that first school I talked about, Oakwood in Huntsville, man, I always had a love for the mind. I always had a love for just psychology and therapy. Even though up to that point I had never really gone to therapy myself, I just had a love for it. I don't know why. And even while I was in school, I wanted to pursue a double major in psychology. But there was one teacher who was like really super religious, super spiritual. And basically, he was like, yo, if you choose God, then you cannot have a plan B. And essentially, what he was telling us is, you can't double major. If you double major, that means you don't trust God. Yeah, I kid you not, man. Just like almost like,
Wow.
yeah, almost some sort of spiritual abuse, man. You know what I'm saying? It was wild. It was out there, but he was such a prolific spiritual leader, professor, and teacher that we all revered and admired. It was like, yo,
Sure.
if he says this, this is like God speaking to us, like God speaking through him to tell us we should not do this. So I just kind of completely shut that down for a long time. Came out of school, or excuse me, went to get my master's degree and graduate in seminary. Then I started pastoring in Cleveland, Ohio. I was there for like 2.5 years. Then I went down to Virginia. I was pastoring there for a while. And I think about maybe a year or two into there, so about 5 years out of school, that's when, after I got married, I started talking to my wife about it. And my wife was like, yo, you should do this. Like, you would be gifted in it. And the funny thing is, Rob, as a pastor, I'm counseling people already, all the time, right? But I'm not doing it clinically, right? So it's not with the clinical skill and the therapeutic skill that I have now, but I'm counseling couples and all these different types of things. And to be honest with you, there were probably some people I should not have been counseling because I was not skilled enough, or I didn't have the tools to actually be able to help them. All right. That's a whole other story. But I was there.
And what you just said, there was so much to that. But go ahead, continue.
So I started going back to school, man, and started, learning the tools and the skills that I needed. I will tell you that when I went to school, man, my classmates, they were just kind of like, yo, John is a natural. Like, they kept saying that over and over. And not because this is not me like being arrogant or anything, but just because I had spent so much time in pastoral ministry, like dealing with people. My whole role as a pastor is communication. I knew how to deal with people. And so I was like much further advanced than a lot of people in my class, and was able to communicate a little better and kind of understand. And I also believe, Spirit of God helped me discern a few things when it comes to my clients. So, I was able to go into that. And, since doing that, and even while doing it, I began to recognize, man, that there are people. There's a book I'm reading now called Hiding in the Pews, where this pastor who had a mental health breakdown, he actually goes into like a psychiatric hospital because he's overly depressed and even suicidal as well. He just was talking about in the book how we have people within our pews who are mentally ill, right? But what we have done is we've practiced something called spiritual bypass, which is essentially when people say, oh, we're just going to pray about that. All right. No matter what the issue is, we're going to pray about it because prayer, covers everything. Don't get me wrong. I know you believe it too. I believe in the power of prayer. I've seen the power of prayer work. I understand how prayer works, but I also believe that God has given man tools and abilities to be able to help people in certain areas in their life. So realizing that as a pastor, seeing people who are mentally ill in the pews, seeing people who are ill-equipped to handle life circumstances, even though, they were reading their Bible and saying the right words in church, it caused me to say, you know what, I am needed in this space. There is a need for people who understand both theology and therapy to sort of bridge that gap between the two. I know I'm talking too much, but that's the story.
No. Okay, so understand. This whole episode is about you, brother. Right, so it's not about you talking. If I talk too much, is a problem. Okay. So there was so much there, though, and don't worry, I like bookmark each part. So, and I'm going to ask you one more question, just so we can even bridge point off that. What is therapy without God?
Therapy without God. So, it's funny you asked that. I have a supervisor that I meet with probably every other week. And I sort of ask him these questions as well, because there are people in the space who are just like, God has no place in therapy, right? And then there are people who say, vice versa, therapy has no place with God or what have you. And he's a Christian as well. And what he said to me is, he says, John, when I go and meet with people, and even though they don't believe in God or they don't want God involved in their therapy, man, he says, when I go in and meet with them, it's like I'm going into the cave of their life and I leave breadcrumbs for God to follow me, right? So it's just like he kind of leaves a little trail, a little opening, man, for God to come into their life. And even a lot of the wisdom that he uses in his therapeutic sessions comes from the Bible. And as a matter of fact, we can even look at therapy today And I think that we can recognize that a lot of the skills and tools that are used in therapy actually probably emanated out of the wisdom of the Bible. And I can show you vice versa in the Bible, where Jesus uses, therapeutic techniques, if you will, with some of the people that he meets with, including the woman at the well. But that's a whole nother story too.
Yeah. No, well, no,
but
okay. Go
yeah,
ahead.
no, go ahead. Good.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, okay, so I'm sitting here and I'm running through what your friend said. You know how he leaves breadcrumbs for God to follow him in, and I was sitting there, all of a sudden, it just screamed at me like, are the breadcrumbs for God to follow him in? Are the breadcrumbs for him to find himself back out because God's already there?
That's good. That's good. Probably both, I would say
Yeah,
as well. But
yeah.
yes,
I mean, and I can see how
yeah,
both
yeah.
could play. But and the only reason I asked that and I asked you that question was because, you know, I used to think that they were in separate arenas, and you didn't necessarily tell people in your Christian arena that you were going to therapy. So it's almost
Mhm.
like you believe that you were cheating on God by going to therapy.
Yeah.
And so you did it kind of like hush hush quiet. You went and did that. And I realized in what I thought was cheating on God that God was sitting in there already waiting on me.
Yeah.
And he was
Mm-hmm.
waiting on me with everything that I had buried, everything that I had hid away, that I had stored away, that I had stuffed away, and he just brought it
Hmm.
all right back to my memory. And I
Yeah.
and I and I always ask when I'm talking to somebody who's even in this space, who understands the importance of therapy, I always ask the question of like, what is therapy without God? Because I believe that therapy can work without God, but if God can speak to through a pastor, why can't God speak through a therapist?
Yeah, you can. Absolutely.
E-
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
And I would, not to not challenging that, but coming alongside that,
Mhm.
it's funny how we think about therapy, right? Because a lot of these questions that we ask about therapy, there seems to be a prejudice towards it because we don't ask these questions sometimes, right? About, the medical profession, right? So you're out in the yard and you're using the chainsaw, and let's just say you're by yourself and you just cut down a tree, but you cut off your arm. And I'm standing there, Pastor Coaxum is standing there. I mean, you're probably not going to say, hey, can you pray for me right now? I highly doubt that's the first thing that's going to be out of your mouth. The very first thing you're going to, can you please call 911?
That's not funny, but that's so true. Like what you're saying right now is so true. And I've even said that to people, and that
Yeah.
nobody, when they physically get hurt, their first thought is, and don't get me wrong, there may be some to a level of like, hey, as we're riding in the ambulance, let's pray about this for
Sure,
sure.
sure, sure, sure.
But I'm in the ambulance headed to get taken care of
Right.
because not that I don't believe God can cause my arm to go back on, because we've watched Jesus pick up an ear and put it back
Hmm.
on a man. But I also recognize that God gave these men that I'm going to a gift to be able to do what he's called them to do. Same with
Yeah.
therapy.
Yeah. And let's be real too. You got to go in and you got to get your arm put back on through surgery.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that you don't just want a Christian. You don't want just a Christian in the operating room. Now, granted, God can do
Mm,
anything. We praise God. God can
mm,
use anybody.
mm,
But you want
mm,
somebody with skill. And as a matter of fact, in an emergency situation, let's just be 100% real for a minute.
mhm,
I mean, you're not asking, did he read his Bible this morning? Okay. You're not asking, did
mhm.
he do this and that and the third? All of that is important. But in the moment, let's just be honest, when you are in crises, you're in a plane and the plane is about to go down. You want a pilot. Okay.
Yeah, for
You don't
sure.
want me. I'm a pastor. I'm a man of God. I know the Bible. I pray every day. I read the Bible. But I am
Right,
sure you would not want to entrust your life to me in a plane situation. You want to entrust your
right,
life to a pilot. I don't know if
right.
that's making sense, but
No,
yeah.
it made tons of sense to me. I mean, regardless of how God uses you, God can,
Hmm.
I'm a firm believer of this. God will use people who have yet to even receive Him. God will use people who have
Mm.
yet to even believe that He is who He is.
Right.
I have seen it personally in my life, and I still am like, wow, God, you have the power to adjust the heart posture of people who are yet to believe that you could even occupy their heart, to step into situations and help people when it doesn't make any sense to you. And I've seen it, and I recognize that when God is already in the space, he's already occupying the space of what's going to happen in that space. And so, you know, I love that you went back and said, you know what, I see an importance in not just leading, because you are a shepherd and you're in charge of the flock that you've been given. And it's one thing to lead a flock from a space of like, well, you know, this is the best I know. This is the tools that I was given growing up. This is all that I can give you and offer you. But to say I'm going to go back and pick up some tools that will allow me to better be able to offer you tools yourself to be able to whether it be put your marriage back together or get through a dark time in your life or reunite yourself with your true self, your identity, your authentic self. But all of those work in the space of the church.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it does. And we can do a lot of that in the church. I just think that there are some things that are beyond the typical training of a pastor, right? Even when I was in school, you know, we had one class on pastoral counseling, and it didn't really deal with, you know, obviously the wide range of mental disorders and stuff like that, because that wasn't within the purview of the seminary. But, you know, a lot of the skills and techniques that I've gained as a result of going to school has helped me to be able to have a conversation with anybody. I mean, to be honest with you, and I say this all the time, and I hope I don't have to go back on this, but man, there's very little that really can scare me now or really shock me. I've heard so much stuff in my time as a counselor, so many things that would, you know, shock average people. And now I can hear it all. And I'm equipped to be able to, you know, answer people's questions and listen and, you know, provide that listening ear to them for whatever they're going through. Yeah.
Gotcha. So what made you want to be a pastor?
Ooh. So funny, man. I never really wanted to be a pastor at first. I felt like pastors were poor when I was a kid. I was like, they don't make a lot of money. And, you know, why are they yelling at people from the pulpit? You know, as a kid, and then, come on, as a kid, church was boring too. You know, the only reason I really wanted to go sometimes was because my friends were there. There was nothing enticing about church for me. But it became that time when I was in high school. And man, it was time to, you know, decide what we were going to do with our future, maybe junior or senior year. And all the kids were talking about what they were going to do, what college they wanted to go to, and what career. And I just didn't know. I really did not know what I wanted to do. And, you know, I would write down on the papers, you know, I want to be a fireman, but listen, dude, I'm not running in nobody's burning house. That's just not me. I'm not going to do it. You know, I wrote down, I want to be a doctor. But you know, man, you know, I don't want to be cutting into people. There's certain things I don't want to see and be doing all that kind of stuff. I wrote down a whole bunch of stuff just to kind of fill that space, but I had never fully determined what I wanted to do. And I remember that my dad, man, he would always say to me, son, I think you would be a good pastor. I think you would be a good preacher. But you know, he's my dad. I'm just like, okay, that's something that you want me to do. And my father actually came into the faith like kind of later on in life. And I thought he was just trying to live his dream through me, like vicariously through me, and tell me, hey, you should be a pastor. And I wasn't having it, right? But it came to the point where I needed to make a decision, you know, because I got to know what I need to do when I get out of high school. And I remember like it was yesterday, I think my dad was raking leaves in the backyard. I went to him and I asked him, I said, Dad, you know what? I think I'm going to give this pastor thing a try. I was like, but I probably need to read the Bible first. Like, you know, where should I start? What should I read? All this kind of stuff. And he says, son, read the 4 Gospels. Now, I didn't know, you know, a lot about the Bible, but I knew that the 4 Gospels were in the middle of the Bible. And I was like, why are you telling me to start in the middle of the Bible of all places? He was like, son, because if you get Jesus, you'll get everything else.
Oh,
when he told me
now.
That, yeah, I mean, the wisdom of a dad, man. Yeah,
that's good. Hey, look, that's good. I agree with him.
Yeah, man. It blew me away even in that moment. And I went to do it. And I'm not, you know, putting no sauce on it. I'm not trying to spice this up for the podcast, man. This is the truth. I went in my room and like every day I would be reading the Bible. I mean, just like I would be engulfed in it, just eating it up. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Just kind of excited about the words of Jesus. And I remember having these sticky notes on my desk, and I would write down the verses that stood out to me, and I would just like stick it on the window from day to day, the stuff that stood out. And before long, man, I noticed that my entire window, I kid you not, was just covered with these sticky notes from the words of Jesus. I was just impressed by all of it, and it blew me away. And it was in my room, man, where I was converted. You know, a lot of people say they were converted, you know, they heard a sermon, they were at a evangelism effort, you know, they were online. None of that happened for me. I was literally converted in my room reading the Bible for myself. Started preaching a little bit. People started asking me to come out to youth events because I was still young. They flew me around some places, started preaching, doing all that kind of stuff, went off to college, and then the rest is history. So that's how I decided to get into ministry. Realized that I had a love for people as well, and just a love for helping and a love for giving people hope. And I will tell you the one thing that pulls these two things together for me, therapy and theology. The one thing that I love to do in life more than anything else, I love to help people connect the dots. I love that in every aspect of life. I love to help people get from where they are to where they want to be. And that's helped sustain me in both of the careers that I'm in right now.
No, that's good. That's good. I love that. I'm sitting here. I'm like, man, I resonate with that so much. Yeah, no, I can definitely agree that there is something in, and I truly think it's less about you when you're helping another person get from where they're at to where they're trying to go, even if it's just pointing them back to the right road.
Yeah.
Because everybody doesn't get from point A to point B. And a lot of times, I mean, you know this, the whole process of healing, the whole process of grieving, the whole process, it's never like I think I described it to a guy the other day. I was like, man, you remember the first time you gave your child a crown? He was like, yeah, where you going with that? I was like, you remember what they did on that piece of paper? I said, that is what healing is like. That's what your journey is going to look like. It just when you think you're going up, it's going to go over to the side. It's going to come back down. I wouldn't even describe it like the stock market, because we always look at the stock market as a chart that's going to chart up. But know that no matter what happens, you may chart down, you may run down, and your choice to chart up. It's all up to the decisions you make. It's up to the work that you put in. And so I see how important that is. And I love that God pulled at your heart to bring you closer to him, even before he began to connect the dots for you with putting together your ministry with the background of having a therapeutic background to support others, because he knew how important it was going to be for you to support others in that space of like knowing that every pastor has, well, I won't say has to, but every pastor that has a connection with his flock is at a certain point going to be asked to say, hey, look, can you help us through some things? Yeah. And regardless, I think I saw this in one of your videos. Before you even said it, come into those settings, you always pray. Yeah. Because you know that, I may have a background in this, but God already has a foreground in this, meaning he's already ahead of it. He's already there. He's already working and orchestrating things. So if I can trust him, if I know that he can speak through me, which you said, I know that he will speak through me to say exactly what this couple needs, regardless of what I may be believing. How important do you feel like that is needed in ministry of all sorts?
Having a therapeutic background? What do you mean?
Well, just having and I won't even say a therapeutic, because I don't think everybody's going to have a fully therapeutic background, but understanding that God he plays a huge role in therapy, and whether it's like I have the skills to understand or whatever that looks like, how important do you feel like, and I would even say, well, I'm going to double back on that question and say, how important do you believe it is to have the tools that you get from a therapeutic background to help people? Like, what is it that you have that the other pastor who felt like that you should never dabble in one or the other doesn't
Mhm.
have?
I think an understanding of the mental health continuum, right? So,
Mm,
kind of like if you go back in the Bible, in the Old Testament and even the New Testament, I mean, a lot of the people in the Bible did not understand to the degree we understand now mental health, right?
for
For many
sure.
of them, they probably just, lumped mental health into the basket of the demonic, right? At all times, someone is
Mm,
demonically possessed. But the mental health continuum that was really coined, I think, by Matthew Stanford. He wrote a couple of books that I'm just really I love and that are very profound. He basically talks about the fact that, man, on one end is like the good and the flourishing, the functional and the flourishing, and on the other end of a continuum, if I had a graphic I could show you, is disorder and dysfunction. Right, that's where we get into kind of like the DSM-5. That's like, major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, potentially, which is really severe, schizophrenia and bipolar and different things like that. But he said in between these two marks in the continuum, there are different stages. And if you were to catch certain things at certain stages, you can help move people back down the continuum, back to functional and flourishing. That's where
mm,
therapy comes in. That's where listening to somebody comes in. That's where asking the right questions comes in, or using discernment or insight. And I think most of the time, and this is not just for pastors, I think this is kind of like a Christian thing sometimes as well, or maybe I should say a church thing sometimes. We legitimately want to fix people. Okay. That's what we want to do.
right,
When someone has an
right.
issue, we want them to be fixed. We have not really, I think, large scale shown people that we want to sit with them in their dysfunction
Mm, come
and kind of
on.
walk with them through it, or hold their hand, or just listen. As a matter of fact, this is a big thing even for me. I'm a counselor and a pastor, and my wife hates this about me, right? Because with people, with clients and members, I can be very patient and just kind of sit there and listen and tap into my skills. But when I'm talking to my wife, I don't know why, it just kind of goes out the window, man. When she comes home, she got a problem with a coworker or something. I want to fix that joint, like right now. Okay,
Right.
this is what you need to do. I'm on the wall. Like, this is the playbook. This is what, X's and O's, all this kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Do this, do that. She's like, yo, that's not what I need right now. What I need you to do is listen. And to be
Mm,
clear, as pastors, at least in my experience and for many of my colleagues, man, that's what we've been taught to do. We have been taught to fix. We have been taught to preach a good message about this, or pray somebody through it, or give somebody advice. When in reality, therapy is really not about all of that. I mean, at times, yes, we may advise, but that's not the root of therapy. The root of therapy, Rob, is actually asking questions, which,
yeah.
by the way, is the method of Jesus Christ. There's a
Yes.
there's a book, man. I don't know if it's on my page or whatever. I may have talked about it. And in one of my posts, I talk about the fact that in this book, it's amazing. He says, man, in the Gospels, Jesus asked over 300 questions, right?
Hmm.
And he only answered 8 questions directly that were posed to
Right.
him. I mean, dude, this is literally the man who is the embodiment of the truth. If anybody should be answering questions, it should be Jesus. But you know
Right.
why he asked questions? Because asking a question invites somebody on a journey of self-discovery,
There it
right?
is.
Yeah, man. And
Yeah.
therapy is beautiful in that, because it helps people to be able to work out some of their own stuff and process some of their stuff. Whereas
Hmm.
sometimes, and we should be able to merge both of this in Christianity as well. But sometimes when it comes to the church and when it comes to Christianity, we are unable to do that, because we just want to
Hmm.
fix people and make people
Hmm.
holy and make them
Yep.
righteous and make
Right.
them worthy of the church, when we should be sitting with them in their dysfunction. So,
Wow.
yeah, man, I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah,
important
Lord.
to
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think it's important,
No,
man, to
that was so
have,
good. That was
to,
good. That was
yeah,
good.
man, to have
I'm
these
glad you said it.
skills. Yeah, especially as a pastor, so that, man, before we kind of jump in, jump all in the Kool-Aid, we don't even know what's going on. We need to ask some questions first, right? We need to
Hmm.
process with
For
this
sure.
person. What's
For
going
sure.
on? What's happening, or what have you? And all of that is really, really important.
Yeah. No.
Hmm.
Wow. That was good. That was, yeah, man, you stomped that out. That was good.
Yeah. Hmm.
So with all of that said, because you hit on so much good stuff there. Um,
Hmm.
I recognize that it wasn't just God wasn't just done with you when he said, okay, hey, look, I've already put it on his heart to serve others, to be a shepherd in
Hmm.
ministry from the pulpit, and take on the therapeutic space. But you also created something that I thought, like when I came across your page and I saw that, I was like, yo, like, wait a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, this takes it to a whole new level, because
Hmm.
not only was my first thought was like, man, I'm gonna use that product just right here in my podcast. I'm going to use this product in my men's fire pit groups,
There you go.
in my little social groups. I could even use this product, me and my wife, like this. And I know everybody's like, wait a minute, man, what type of product is this guy talking about? So I would love for you to explain what God birthed out of you that he saw and I see and you saw so much potential in our space.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll start by saying, and we've kind of alluded to it already, there's
Yeah.
a stigma about mental health in the church. It's one of the places where if you mention, in some churches, not all, obviously, but in some churches, if you mention mental health, they're just like, whoa, we don't need all of that. That's of the
Mhm.
world, that's secular, so on and so forth. There is no merging of the two. Well, I'm a living embodiment of the merging of the two. That's who John Coaxum is as a pastor and as a therapist. And I wanted to create something, man, that would help kind of break down the walls of stigma between the two and hopefully help Christians and believers everywhere become more comfortable with mental health concerns and their own mental health. So what I created is called Pneuma Cards, and it's basically a guide for self-discovery and reflection for those who value both God and mental health. Right now, I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of resources, man, in my time as a pastor and as a therapist. So, like, as a pastor, we got commentaries, man. We got, Bible study books up the wazoo. You can go on Amazon. You can go, yeah, you got all this kind of stuff. You got the Bible,
For
all these different
sure.
types of things, right? In the therapeutic space, you got a lot of stuff too. You got the DSM-5, you got journals, you got workbooks. I mean, I could bore you to death with how many things I
Yeah.
have just on my bookshelf and in my house. But there are very few resources, I would say, if any, really, that merge therapy and theology the way I've decided to
Ooh,
do it.
so true.
So
So true.
what I've done is I've created a first of its kind faith-based therapeutic card deck. First of its
Right.
kind, unique, faith-based therapeutic card deck. And basically the card deck helps people who value God, if they have a relationship with God, or even if they don't, maybe if they want one, and those who value mental health to be able to gauge, speak to, and act on their spiritual, mental, and emotional health all at the same time in one card deck,
Nice.
right? You can
Yeah.
use
Yeah.
this. So you tell me how far you want me to go. You want me to explain some more? You got some questions for
No,
me?
yeah, no. So that right there in itself. So
Yep.
just when I realized that and realized what you had
Mhm.
merged the two, I was sitting there like, I don't think there's anything else out here like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like I know we can talk about it. I think the closest thing I've seen to something
Mhm.
like that was this T-shirt I bought. That says God and therapy,
Got it
break
there,
the
man.
stigma.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
there weren't a lot of there are books. There are books that people are talking about the two, talking about how they're important. There's you can't miss. There's Sarah Jake Roberts. She's the walking embodiment
Absolutely. Sure. Sure.
of it. But how can you bring it into your home? Like how can you
Mhm.
bring what's going on, the questions you have, the understanding you want into your home?
Yeah.
And I thought when I saw that, I was like, I gotta get it. I gotta have it. I can see how this would help in so many spaces, whether
Yeah.
it be me talking to the youth at church, whether it me,
Mhm.
like I said, talking to the men at the fire pit. Like let's just say the conversation is kind of like coming to like a dead end. It's like, okay, let's get this going by whether it and I'd love for you to break down the different areas of the cards and how it with each area, because there's three different types of cards, correct?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. There's three
And
different
I
types
was
of
going to have
cards.
you, yep, I was going to have you explain that.
Okay. So there's three categories within the deck, right? And the reason I put this in card form is because, as you said, there's books and other things like that. And the reality is a lot of people aren't readers or whatnot, but I thought a card deck would be the least, the least, the thing that would not provide such a barrier, right? For people to be able to use it. They can pick it up and they can use it that day. So there's three
Sure.
different types of categories. There's you and God, you, and you and others. So the card deck is broken down in the three fundamental relationships that are important to every single person on earth. And let me break that down just a little bit more. So the you and God, which is, shown with the blue circle right here with an arrow going up, obviously pointing to God. That's the whole point of it, right? Is designed to gauge, man, your proximity or your distance to God. Because let's be real, your relationship with God is the most foundational. Everything else, every part of yourself emanates from that relationship first. And the more you
Sure.
have a distinct and deep relationship with God, the more you will understand yourself and what direction you are headed in life. The second is probably my favorite. Now, we understand that you and God is the most important, but the you and you category is really probably my favorite. And that's the red circle there with the dot in the middle. And it's my favorite because these questions kind of gauge your triggers, your habits, your addictions, your tendencies, and ask you those challenging questions that you may be afraid to even ask yourself, right? And part of the
Mhm.
reason that many of us don't grow is sometimes we're not asking the right questions, right? Well, these cards actually do that for you. They ask you these challenging questions so that you can process what's going on inside of you. And I will say this too. A lot of people will say, well, hold up. No, that's not spiritual. That's not biblical. You don't have a relationship with yourself. Well, let's just be clear. The Bible says, man, that we ought to love the Lord our God with all our mind, strength, body, soul, spirit, and love your neighbor as yourself. All right. And, we will emphasize the former, but not the latter, right? We're supposed to love our neighbors, but it's very difficult to love people if you do not love yourself, right? As a counselor, I can tell you right off the bat, this is one of the main things I deal with in individual counseling is the insecurities that people have in their life, the lack of self-love, the lack of self-esteem, the lack of self-worth. These are important questions in order for us
Mhm.
to be able to understand ourselves. And then the third category
Yeah.
is you and others with that yellow circle there with the arrow pointing out. And obviously, this is to gauge your relationship with other people, including family, friends, close loved ones, associates, whoever it is. And the bottom line is we were created for connection, Rob, right? That's how God
Right.
created us. No man is
Sure.
designed to be an island. He made it so that we would be influenced and we'd be interconnected with other people. And I will tell you that as a counselor as well, one of the first things we look for with any person that we see is, man, do they have a healthy support system? I'm gonna tell you right now, if you come and sit in my chair and you say you have no one that you can rely on, you don't talk to anybody, there is nobody where you can share your feelings with or process or anybody that cares about you, I mean, bells start going off as a counselor. I mean, red flags, fireworks, everything, right? Because you are that much more susceptible to all types of disorders, including suicidal ideation. So this is important, right? And it helps us to
Yeah.
gauge our relationship in all of these areas so that we're a more well-rounded person. All right.
Yeah. No,
And
no.
yeah, yeah, and I'll tell you, man, that each card is beautiful because each card on the front it has a relevant scriptural text on the front, so a text from the Bible. All right. On the back, it has a open ended question for someone to be able to ask themselves. So a question that's more than yes or no. And then it has a
Right.
task at the bottom as well, which is something that someone could put action behind. I was trying to be very intentional with these cards because anybody can come up with, a Bible study. We got the Bible, we got some questions along with it, but I wanted to make it actionable so that people could actually grow. And so we've included all three of these things in these cards, and that's what makes up Pneuma cards.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And as when I heard the breakdown of it, I would agree with you. I enjoy the version of I definitely understand that it starts with God, and I always talk about
Hmm.
how like my connection starts with God, but
Hmm.
then without my connection with me, I'm glad you broke that down, because there are a lot of people who feel like it is unbiblical to see the importance of having a relationship or loving you, because
Hmm.
it's almost like they see it as a sense of like um pride or something. I don't know how they break it down that you shouldn't love you when it clearly says. But I've always recognized that most people will quote that scripture and be like, you're supposed to love God with all your heart, and then you're supposed to love your neighbor. And I'll sit there and I'll be like, yeah, okay. What else? And they're
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
well, that those are the two most important. I'm like, yeah, but you missed something. And I was
Hmm.
like, and then maybe you were just always taught that you're supposed to love God and then love others. But it
Hmm.
says that you're supposed to love others as you love yourself.
That's right.
And the question is how do you love yourself?
Yeah.
What have you done to show yourself that you love you?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
if you don't love you, if you don't see your importance, imagine how you're loving others,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you're loving
Absolutely.
others the way you love you.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely.
And that makes people sit there and just kind of say, sheesh, I didn't think about it like that. And so I think that is why it is so important to sit down with the deck of cards that makes you focus back on yourself. Like what have you
Hmm.
poured into yourself? Have you asked yourself those hard questions? Have you understood? Because as you said, and we started this conversation, there are a lot of people in the pulpit who are hurting. And they're
Hmm.
hurting because they haven't done the work to understand what's fueling that hurt. What's behind that?
Right.
What
Absolutely.
happened?
Absolutely.
Where did it start? And they just kind of like patch themselves up. They do whatever they do to have to do to keep pushing through, because I have a congregation to take care of. But the problem is
Hmm.
that I said this in an episode or two ago. You're bleeding all over your congregation, and they recognize it, but they're just trusting you because
Hmm.
you've been ordained to watch over them. So they go along with it. And so it's so important, no matter what your
Yeah.
profession is, to have a relationship with yourself. Because if you're not good, then nobody around you is good. And then
Yeah.
it goes
Hmm.
to that relationship with others.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say this, man, I think as pastors, therapists too, but since we're talking about pastors, we wield a tremendous amount of power. A tremendous amount of power as pastors. We have a captive
Sure.
audience every single week, and the majority of them will hang on every single word, right? We always preach,
Yes.
we want you to read the Bible for yourself and stuff like that. But there's a lot of members who actually don't, and they just take whatever the pastor says as whatever. I mean, we could
For sure.
really enforce some spiritual abuse if we want to. I mean, and as you said, and I'm sure it's been said a number of times on your podcast, hurt people hurt people. It's a very common saying that people, it's actually very true. And the reality is, if a pastor is hurt in his own life, he's insecure, doesn't have self-worth, doesn't know or believe that he is a child of God, man, he could, preach some pretty abusive sermons. He can manipulate people in a variety of different ways. And so, yeah, definitely understanding self is critically important. And what we have done sometimes in some churches is, oh no, just know God, just know the Bible and all this kind of stuff. And, I don't know who would disagree with me on this, but I would say that there are people, man, who could read the Bible backwards and forwards and still not have a thriving relationship with God, right? Because maybe they haven't
Yes.
interpreted right or they haven't applied it to their life in the right way. Yeah. So I 100%
Mm,
agree with you.
that's so
Yep.
good. That's so good.
Yep.
So now we can't have
Yep.
this whole conversation without slightly unpacking the
Yep.
reason why the space of therapy, healing, some people call it spiritual journey, all of these different names, why it can get very confusing to some who can say, okay, you had me at like, I understand now the importance, but as I look around in this world of healing therapy and all, there are a lot of things that I'm just like, I know I'm not supposed to be doing that. I know I'm not supposed to introduce that. That doesn't seem right. So why is this whole space right?
Yeah.
And how would you respond to those people? Just because I know I've had my own response, but I'd love to hear what you would normally say to people who say, I can see more of the world in this space than I can see God.
Yeah. And I mean, it's understandable for a person that's been in the church, the majority of their life, to say something like that. I will say that we can see elements of, let's say, I don't want to say therapy, but a therapeutic technique in the Bible, particularly in the life of Jesus. As I mentioned earlier, he used questioning on a number of occasions. Matter of fact, even go back into the prophets, right? What immediately comes to mind is this story of David and Bathsheba. And after he sleeps with this woman who was not his wife,
Yes.
right? And, sends her back home, sends off her husband to die in war, this kind of huge scandal that he does, then brings her into his house, marries her, and is about to go on and live his life like nothing has ever happened. What does the Bible say? The
Right.
Bible says that God sends the prophet Nathan, and
Nathan.
Nathan
Yep.
goes to David, and Nathan doesn't just call him out or rebuke him in that moment, but Nathan tells him a story. He uses metaphor and allegory
Yes.
first to help David understand the weight and the depth of what he has actually done. And then he brings to his mind the awareness of the great sin that he has committed. We do that all the time in therapy. We do it all the time. We use metaphor. Imagine this, right? Or what do you think about this? We use questionings and things of that nature to help people sort of process what is going on. Because if we tell them directly what is going on, they may throw their hands in the air, they may storm out the room, they may not get it, they may not want to receive it or accept it. But we try our best to find the best way of helping them grasp what is going on in their life. I can go on and on. We talk about Jesus and the woman at the well who he could have simply just called her out, but he said, you know what? Hey, go get your husband first. Like, come on. He knew.
Right.
He knew.
Right.
Okay. This is not a
Right.
game. Like Jesus knew. All right. So I just need everybody to understand that many of the techniques that, are happening in the counseling office or in the counseling room are the same things that happen in the Bible. And a lot of the people who are saying, well, we don't want this kind of stuff because this is not of God, have never actually sat in a counseling chair. So they have no idea. They're just assuming. Right. And also they're thinking of Sigmund Freud, right? Which is psychoanalytic, stuff that many counselors don't even practice today. Dream therapy and interpreting this and interpreting that. Most counselors are not doing that. We're simply doing talk therapy, just like I'm talking to you right now. We're just more skilled in the way that we ask questions, process things, and help people understand what is going on in their life. By the way, I have to give you one more because I think this is like the prototypical example, which is Elijah after coming down from Mount Carmel. He does this great thing with all the prophets, and then he comes down and immediately he's like thrown into this moment of depression. And what does God do? God is like, yo, get up, or you shouldn't be doing this because you're a man of God, or what's your problem or whatever. Basically, God gives him something to eat, lets him rest, asks him multiple times what is going on, and then helps gently guide him to a point of recognizing, hey, man, you need to reframe this right now. You think that there's nobody with you, but I got 600 prophets that have not bowed the knee to Baal. Like, God helped him understand what was going on. So I just want people to understand today, man, that a lot of what happens in the counseling room is exactly what is going on in the Bible, sometimes with the exception of, a spiritual emphasis. Now, of course, for me, for all of my clients who want spiritual emphasis, and I ask them if they want to include God, I make it available to them. Hey, absolutely. I pray with some of my clients. I'm really happy and proud to be able to do that. For some of my clients, I can include biblical examples to help them get through and process some of the things that is going on. But then for other clients, they don't want that. And I can still use the wisdom of the Bible and God to be able to help them through their issues. So I think I probably shortened that down for the average person, but that's my thoughts regarding what you said. Yeah.
No, that's good. That's good. And all of it is important. And I recognize that, you know, as I'd like to say that anything God has given us, whether it be a tool, whether it be, perfect example, sex.
Mm-hmm.
We recognize that sex came from God.
Yeah.
We also recognize that the devil took something that God made precious
Mm-hmm.
to many,
Mm-hmm.
and he
Mm-hmm.
polluted it, and he corrupted
Absolutely.
it. And
Sure.
he took it and he added his own little pieces in there and then sold it to you and made you to believe that it's okay.
Yeah.
And I recognize
Absolutely.
the same has happened in the therapeutic space
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
recognizing there are some people. My first encounter in the therapeutic space of healing was with like crystals and sage and different things. And I know this is a sticky topic right here. And I know this topic right here.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go all the way into it. But I'm going to simply say that I recognize that certain things have been introduced into this space, kind of just eased into the door, and the door
Sure.
closed back like nothing
Sure.
ever happened, to give the illusion that on top of the tools of the talk therapy and different forms of therapy, well, these are also tools that God wants you to use. And I recognize that, like, it gets very confusing. It gets very cloudy. People get very lost and sometimes find themselves doing something similar to what the children of Israel did, which is, I recognize the God that brought us out of Egypt. I recognize the God that fed us. I recognize the God that led us through the wilderness. And I recognize that I need something physical that I can hold I can hold in my hand. I can smell that will also assist me on this journey, as they got very, very disconnected from God and began to find idols and worship idols on their journey. And I recognize that happens a lot. That wasn't just the them thing. It can become an us thing. And so, you know, which is why I always resort back to, like, God, this space is a space you created. And so let me know if at any point during this journey of getting closer to you, getting closer to myself, getting closer to the community you want me to be in the life of, what if I may be introduced into this space that doesn't belong?
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, again, the vast majority of counselors are not using, obviously sage and crystals and, smoke and all these different types of things. We're not doing that. I mean, it's just literally at its basic level, we are asking questions to draw out certain things. And I think also, believers, if they're uncomfortable with that kind of thing, and I certainly resonate with that, you have the ability to choose what kind of counselor you want to see. Right? You can go on Psychology Today and you can choose a Christian counselor. There's a bunch of us out there, not as many as we might want, but there's a lot of Christian counselors out there. And if you want that, you can actually go and choose that. People who are skilled not only in therapeutic technique, but skilled in the Word of God as well, or understand how to use the Word of God. So you can do
For
that.
sure. For sure. And not to get it confusing. I definitely wasn't saying that therapists were recommending those tools. I was just saying that in a world where healing is starting to become a popular thing, it's a coin item, it's a coin phrase. You go out on social media and you start to even look into this. You start to see things where you're like, oh, okay, I guess I need to go pick up that.
Exactly.
Okay. And so you're trying to piece together, pish posh your own little journey together of like what I need. It's like the the knapsack of items that I need to go on this journey. And it's like, yeah, some of those items aren't even needed. It might just
Right.
be as simple as like I'm sitting across from my brother and we begin to have questions and we begin to have conversation where he invites me into questions, where he invites me back into parts of my life that I have not visited, where he invites me back and he's simply there, as you said earlier, to say, you're not by yourself. I'm right here. I'm going on the journey with you.
Yeah, and I think, that's why I created the cards as well, right? I created the cards so that we could
Boom.
have these types of conversations and ask these types of questions that we would not normally ask one another, right? Me and my wife actually did the cards together. We got some other videos coming out about them. Me and my wife actually took a card randomly and we just started talking about it and we recorded all of it. It's on my page and on
Yeah,
the
I
YouTube
saw it.
page as well. But I mean, it was just beautiful, man, to be able to talk about things that are spiritually, mentally, and emotionally related that we had never even talked about. And we've been married, for 8, 9 years now. And I think that, these cards will help people to be able to sort of move into the mental health space or whatever, grow a little bit as well, just by asking some of these questions that we don't normally think about. And it includes, obviously, the word of God as well, which is a guide for it. Yeah.
For sure. No, I love that.
Mhm.
I love that. As almost like I thought about this as you were talking. It's like, wow, they had their things that they've introduced into the world to say, here, you need these things on your journey. And you've created something. God created something through you to say, here,
Yeah.
you'll need this on your journey.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to pick this up. And so I see how valuable and how important what you're introducing into this space is. And so I would hope that all my listeners don't just hear this, but they go out and they pick up a set of those cards. We got
Mhm.
playing cards at our house. We got Uno cards. Why
Oh,
not?
yeah.
Like, what are what are
Yeah. Yeah.
what are we doing right now? Like,
Right. Right.
I'm excited. I actually have a deck, and I it's funny because today I ordered another deck because I realized like the second this comes out, when I start, people are gonna ask me like, hey, well, look, can I borrow yours? Yeah, see, I knew that was coming. I got an extra deck
You know
because
how we
see,
are. Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, most definitely. Almost as like
Yeah.
playing cards. These are not the playing
Hmm.
cards that you can borrow.
Right.
But no,
Right.
I'm just excited about continuing on the journey of like just tapping into all of what you have created, what God has created through you, because I recognize how that works, how that happens. But before we get out of here today, man, I would love to give you an opportunity just to not only, I want to get to the point of you sharing your information so people can find you and all, but is there anything you'd love to leave with my audience, something that you feel like God has put on your heart, something, whether it be in story form or whether it just be simply something that he's had on your heart lately that you just wanted to share?
Yeah, man. I just, I think that, above all things, God wants us to be um, to prosper and to be in good health. I really believe that. I actually believe that, right? And I'm not saying like,
Mhm.
a prosperity message, because every time you say the word prosper now in today's society, man, everybody's saying prosperity, rich and all this type of thing. I
Yeah,
ain't
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
lie.
yeah, yeah,
I would
yeah.
love to be rich today, all right? But that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, I think God wants us to prosper and be in health, especially his children. And one of the ways
Mhm.
that we do that is we pay attention to who we are and pay attention to our identity. One of my
Mm.
posts that's probably the most viewed one, I think, is the post that I did on identity. One of the things that we do, man, is that we tie our identity to so many different things, right? We tie it to our cars and our clothes and our prestige and our home and our job and all these different titles that people give us. But the reality is, man, if you lose some of those things, then who are you? Right? You don't know who you are
Mm.
if you lose some of those things. So here's the bottom line. You should never tie your identity to something you can lose. You should never do that. Never tie
Mm.
your identity to something you should lose. Tie your identity. Here's your identity. You are a child of God and you can never lose that. You can never lose it,
Right.
ever. It has been bought and paid for no matter what you do, how many times you do it, who you do it to. You are a child of God. And I realize that people that have that sort of foundation, right? People that know who they are in Christ Jesus, man, these are some of the least insecure
Yeah.
people in the world. These are the most confident people. These are the strong people. These are the resilient people. And that is a huge word in counseling today. These are the people who are able to bounce back from practically any situation in life. Like Paul said in Philippians 4, he was like, yo, I know how to be content. I know how to be rich and be content. I know how to be poor and be content. I've been through it all. I can do all things through Christ who strengthened me. And of course, he was saying, I can endure all things. So I basically want to tell your audience, man, each and every one of you listening, you are a child of the living God. And if you rest your identity, your purpose, and your life on that, there is no way that you will not prosper and be in good health for the rest of your life. I'll leave that with you.
Yeah. No, that's so good, bro. That's so good. I love that message on identity, man. You can't get enough of that. Well, as you were saying it, I'm like, man, see, me and this brother, we speak the same language because we are, because I realize how it starts with identity. And when you realign your identity, at that point, you start to see yourself differently. And when you see yourself differently, you realize that there's work that needs to be done. I can't just sit here in this old identity. So that's so good. That's so good. Well, bro, before we get out of here, John, I'm going to have you just share just some of your information. So first of all, everybody who was like, well, where can I get the cards at? Like, come on, man. Like we're waiting on that. And of course, it's going to be in the show notes. It's going to be in the description. It's going to be in whatever you guys are listening on this platform. It'll be there in the description there. So you can go down there and click on the link or copy the link. But please feel free to share that information with my listeners as well.
Yeah, I'm going to make it real easy for y'all. It's pneumacards.com, PNEUMA cards.com. If you go there and scroll and look around, there's some videos up there explaining more about what I said about the cards. You can also go to my Instagram page, which is therapy, just like how it's spelled, _and_theology. So therapy _and_theology. And you can see all the videos that I posted. A lot of the stuff is about pneumacards, but I also share a lot of insights of all the connections between therapy and theology. And it's been getting a lot of buzz lately. So I hope that you can go there and learn some stuff.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I learned a lot. That's where I bumped into him. And I was like, this has got to happen. This guy's speaking my language. And I was like, I got to reach out. And so I'm so glad God connected us, allowed us to collaborate here and just be able to continue to uplift him just through our stories and through what he's doing through us. And so this is a blessing, brother. I really appreciate the time today. I appreciate your yes to sit here with me. And I'm excited about what God's going to continue to do through what we birth, through what he's pushed out of us. And so thank you again, brother. I really appreciate it. I thank all my listeners for coming and listening today. I hope you guys truly got a lot out of this. I hope you guys maybe got some questions answered. And more importantly, hopefully we pointed you to the most important thing. And it's not the cards. They are definitely down the list. But the most important thing is God. We hope that you can continue to look to him, that you can continue to seek him and understand what he's doing in your life and what he's wanting to do through your life and what he can do in your life as you continue to just sit with him. Understand who you are in him. Understand what you are, whether you're male or female that's listening. Know that what he's continuing to do in your story is far greater than just you, solely you, in your story. What he's going to do is going to reach so many through you and through your story. So be blessed. Love you guys, and we'll talk to you guys again on the next episode. All right?
Yeah, peace.
We appreciate you listening today and hope that if you enjoyed this episode, you'll like and subscribe and also listen to past episodes. We hope to bring you great future content as well. Please comment your thoughts on this episode as well as leave any prayer requests below so that this community can pray alongside you. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook at God's Glory and Israel Stories.
Brothers, we understand how the thoughts of even facing your own past and current story and the pain and hurt that come along with this is no easy task. But you're not alone, as you hear in these episodes. Nor has God forgotten you or left your side, as he's in it with you, fighting alongside you through the storms of life. He loves and has already forgiven you, no matter what you have done, and he wants a relationship with you. Your healing, freedom, and growth are important to God, and to us as well. Maybe you're considering giving up, or need someone to talk to. Here are a few resources that already exist that we hope can shine a light into that dark place you're in. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number is 1-800-273-8255. If you need support but are not in crisis, consider reaching out to a warm line with individuals who would love to talk with you. Speaking to someone on these calls is typically free and confidential and run by people who understand what it's like to struggle in life. Find a local number by going to warmline.org.